Well, good morning, everybody. Ooh, that sounds pretty good. I always, whenever we start, and I get to be on a microphone, and I feel like I should have brought my harmonica, you know? If we could scare up a guitar, we could just have like a blues concert. Everybody'd be better off with that. But I had left my harmonica at home, and I don't see a guitar, so we'll do a Dharma Talk. This has been quite an interesting week. It has been really busy for me. Lots and lots going on. And one of the things that happened was that an old friend a few weeks ago had showed up at KTC, and I hadn't seen him in years. He's a professor at Denison now, and he's doing a series of podcasts along the lines of This American Life. And he wants to do a series of podcasts called Tonglen Stories, compassion meditation stories. So one of the events of the week was he came to my house, and we just had a kind of like chat with, microphones in our faces, which was kind of cool. And then I was invited to the One Breath at a Time AA group because it was their, I think, second anniversary here in this building. And they wanted me to do a short talk and a guided meditation on Tonglen. So this morning, I feel like the universe has given me the message that what I'm supposed to be talking about is compassion. And Tonglen, for those of you who don't know, is a particular form of compassion meditation that is extraordinarily profound, powerful, that anybody can do. You don't have to be in a cave or in robes or have all kinds of ceremonial license through empowerments or whatever. This is something for us all. One of the top secret things in Vajrayana Buddhism is that the things that are open to everybody are actually the most powerful things. It's just that they're so pure and so effective. They're for everybody. The highly specialized things that take have a lot of requirements are generally very specific for beings that are having specific kinds of issues. These ones that we all can practice really, really get to the root of the human condition. So I think it's extraordinarily valuable to talk about this, and not just talk about it. In my mind, explanation should be simple and straightforward, and then practice is the thing. Because it's all about experience, not about knowledge. At the end of the day, we're all gonna die. I have news. I don't know if you knew that, but we were all born. That happened. And we're here, and we will all die. And these kind of practices, we can practice in formal ways on our cushion where it's quiet at home, or off the cushion in our daily lives. And the idea is that we begin to meet whatever comes up for us with the components of enlightened mind, and they're simple components. The union of wisdom and skillful means is considered enlightenment. That's it. And wisdom is loving kindness, it turns out. Surprise. And skillful means is compassion. Kindness is obviously just an open-hearted, mindful generosity. And compassion is having the skill and the insight and the courage to remove suffering from others. And when you put those two together in a given moment, it's an enlightened moment. If you ever have a moment like that, you'll experience, like, I would call it a smile that goes through every cell of your body. It's just, some people call it bliss, but that's a little too conceptual. We all know how we feel when we smile, right? This is like a smile that's just everywhere in our being. And the rules of the game are that this extraordinary smile that some people call bliss does happen. It also disappears. Enlightenment isn't about being in a state of bliss at all moments, at all times. Bliss is just an experience that comes and goes. What doesn't come and go, however, is the experiencer, the awareness that experiences that state of being. And so this meditation is really, really focused on training ourselves in the skill of meeting whatever comes up with presence, with kindness, with compassion, and then allowing those conditions to cause an enlightened state to unfold for ourselves and others. Bringing happiness to the world, that's what it is. So, a long time ago, well, 5 years ago, we had COVID in this everywhere, in this community, in this country. And I had an idea. It's funny, Marcus came because we worked on this together a little bit. We didn't complete the project, but the idea was I wrote a kind of thoroughgoing Tonglen practice based on things I learned from Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche and Alan Wallace and a few other teachers. And I wrote it down as a script so that people could have it and read it to themselves into a recording device and play it for themselves as a guided meditation whenever they wanted to, and it would be a guide in their own voice. The idea being the first thing Khenpo Karthar ever taught us about this practice is we have to start with ourselves. And I thought, and I don't know if this is true, but you can try it. I thought that if we were speaking in our own voice to ourselves, that could be a powerful thing, a powerful way to start. So, at the end or at some point, one of the things I will do was actually lead that meditation here this morning. I brought some copies. So if people want to take one home and give it a try, it's up for grabs. I'll have them in the back or up here or something at the end. So that's what I want to do today. I hope that sounds okay to all of you. But let's start. It's really important to start with refuge prayer. Because the thing that gets in our way from this kindness and compassion in every moment is our habitual tendencies, which are the things that we think of are ourselves, and we take refuge in our habitual tendencies all the time. That's me, that's the way I am, blah, 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 all those stories. And by praying this prayer, what we're saying is, no, I'm not going to take refuge in my habitual tendencies, whatever they are, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm going to take refuge in enlightened mind, which is also actually part of us, but usually hidden by those habitual tendencies. So this is first prayer that we always pray is a way of reminding ourselves that we're taking refuge in enlightened mind. All right? So I'd like to just say it 2 times in English and then chant it the 3rd time in Tibetan. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Sanjay Tudong Suki Cholam La Changchu Bardu Dakni Kapsuchi Daki Jinso Yipe Sunam Ki Drola Penshir Sanjay Druparsho. Thank you. So this thing of starting with ourselves is, it's important because we've got what we've got, and our habitual tendencies are to think that we don't have what we want, and maybe we don't want what we have. And it's a constant, it's almost like it's a constant spinning of trying to get this and avoid that, and it's like a fan spinning along. And that fan is going to keep going. You know, they call samsara cyclic. That's the cycle, trying to get away from some stuff and trying to get other stuff, and it just gets a lot of momentum. And it blows stuff all over the place, and really becomes the center of our attention, when underneath all of that is something that we can rest in with very deep contentment. So the question is, how do we unplug the fan? As long as it's plugged in, it's going to keep going. Well, turns out the simple answer to that is we just become present, very present, in this moment, right now. Well, how do we do that? Well, if we're chasing after presence, that's not going to do it. Or if we're trying to get away from all the conditions that are too noisy and too distracting and too unfortunate, or politics we hate, or whatever it is that's dominating our thoughts, as long as we're engaging in that, the fan's going to keep spinning, because getting away from stuff we don't like and trying to get stuff we do like keeps the fan spinning. The answer is to just stop and be completely present to the moment you're in. So the first thing that we learn on the path of meditation is calm abiding meditation, shamatha, because it's a superpower. What happens with shamatha is, obviously, for those of you who practice, you find yourself a moment where you can just rest your mind on an object. And when your mind goes off somewhere else, you recognize that, and you say, oh, my mind went somewhere else, well, and you smile because it does that all the time. For me, I treat my mind like it's a little kid, that's playing in a sandbox, and sometimes it's all peaceful and just funny and all that, and sometimes it gets in a fight about who gets the dump truck or whatever. As a parent, you just kind of see the kids playing, and as long as they're not hurting each other, you just kind of smile because they're entertaining and funny. Well, I think of my thoughts that way a lot. And you just look at it and you appreciate it, but you have a job to do, which is to rest your mind on whatever this is. It could be your breath, and it could be other objects too. And you just realize the kids are okay. They don't need you right now. They're playing. They're fine. And you just come back. That's calm abiding. When you can do that and you don't get caught up in your own narrative and your own story, there's a certain calm that comes, a certain presence that comes that allows awareness to expand. Okay? And because we have fundamental goodness at the core of our nature, it allows that to flower. And it allows kind of like insight and inspiration to flower and begin to express itself in the present moment, whatever that is. I know you've all met people in your life that are able to do that. Could have been a teacher or a parent or a friend. Well, that's a human superpower, and we can do that. Once that occurs, you feel pretty good. I mean, that's my experience. That feels pretty good. And you begin to recognize there are a lot of people, a lot of beings all around us that aren't feeling so good. And you want them to feel better. You want to do everything you can to help them feel better. But as you know, we're all limited. There's only so much we can do. So that sense of wanting to help, wanting to bring this direct connection with goodness into this world for the benefit of others as well, that's compassion, or at least the aspiration to be compassionate. And that's where this practice Tonglen comes in. It begins to train the mind in ways to be present with those qualities. It turns out there's this thing. I hope this is not too nerdy or geeky, but I'm going to give this a try. Let's see. There's this thing in physics, quantum physics these days, called string theory. I've only read a little bit about string theory. But the gist of it seems to be that, this table, this body, that water, whatever, if you drill down into it, it's made up of molecules, right? And if you drill down into those molecules are made of atoms. And if you drill down into those atoms are made up of subatomic particles, even smaller. And it turns out that they've been able to even penetrate the reality of subatomic quantum particles. And the description the physicist gives is there's a little string of light. I don't know why it's a string instead of a spot. That's above my pay grade, but that's why it's called string theory. And it's just light. And based on the influence of other things around it, and those other things can include, this is like crazy, consciousness itself, it can influence that light to manifest as different particles, gluons, quarks, the God particle or whatever that thing is, and those things under the influence that's around them combine and recombine into atoms, which combine and recombine into molecules, which under the influence of our consciousness, if we want to build a table, becomes a table. All right? What Dharma teaches us is that we have this light, this unconditioned light within us. It's the core of our being. So, we're kind of in charge of what kind of particles we want to produce out of this little string of light within. And so we calm down. And so we practice compassion meditation, because really we want ourselves and others to literally swim in an ocean of kindness and compassion. And it's up to us. It's really up to us. It's one of the reasons that people who actually can do that well, like, say, His Holiness Dalai Lama, you just around him or even see a picture of him, you just know he's got that. And we think they're special, but they think they're ordinary. I don't know how many times I've heard the Dalai Lama say, "I'm just an ordinary monk." And I look at him, I say, "Oh, no, you're not." And he says, "Oh, yes, I am." But the point is, just ordinary beings like us have this extraordinary potential to realize the light within us, our own nature, and actually create the conditions for that light to manifest as enlightened qualities. You know, there are a lot of lists for what those are, like the 6 perfections, for instance, generosity, ethics, patience, joy, particularly joy in the good fortune of others, empathetic joy, mindful awareness, and wisdom. Wow, if you meditate on those all the time, that's going to influence the kind of thing that you produce. How wonderful, all right? So that's the reason we do this and we practice this, is because we actually want to impact this life energy that is with us all the time. And we actually want to contribute to this vast network of interconnection that we're a part of. We want to contribute that. Just understanding this stuff doesn't really help very much at all. Reading a lot of books about it doesn't really help very much at all. But if you get on your cushion and practice it a little every day, it's so natural to us that it helps a lot. It's very simple. The other thing that does, and this will be kind of the last bit of this part of the talk, is once we get used to it, while we're walking around and we're not on the cushion and we see something wonderful, our minds are in the habit of rejoicing in the good fortune that somebody else might be having. And being able to make an aspiration that, wow, may everybody have that good fortune. Or if you see something really unfortunate, or in my case, I see things and I can flash with anger, you know. I've got that. I can see that anger quicker rather than fall into the story and the justification of it, which just becomes a big obstacle because the story becomes me, the story of my life and all that kind of stuff. Well, through getting my mind used to the fact that it can drop a thought and that it wants to create this environment where my life can manifest in enlightened ways, I can see the anger, not get freaked out by it, just let it go, and maybe even think, may my anger contain all the anger in this world right now. And one day, may we all be free of it and manifest enlightened qualities or live at peace, in harmony, and so forth. This is however you want to say that prayer, but it's hard to do that on the fly if your mind's not used to being in that space. That's why we get on the cushion and we do something like what I'm talking about here, this more formal practice. Sakni Rinpoche has this great little story he tells. Sakni Rinpoche is the older brother of Mingyur Rinpoche. Some of you might know Mingyur Rinpoche if you don't know him. And he says there's an old Tibetan story of a guy who walks around and he's got this gorgeous jewel on the top of his head. And he's feeling good. He's got this jewel. And one day, this mugger comes and he's got a big wooden pole and he whacks him on the top of the head. And the jewel disappears. And he spends all his time trying to find that jewel again. And it turns out that whack in the top of the head caused a deep wound, and the jewel fell into the wound, but he didn't know it. He thought it was out here somewhere. So he was looking out here all over the place. But where that jewel was hiding was actually under his wound, under his scar tissue. I don't know if you all can relate to that, but I think we all have wounds of one kind or another, at least psychologically, and scar tissue. And that's why Rinpoche told us to start with ourselves, because what we're seeking is actually here. What can do some good for the others that you care about is actually here. There's no, perfect weather that will help, or perfect politics that will help, or perfect anything you can imagine, perfect temperature. It's like when I go on retreat, I want it to be blue skies and sunshine and 70 degrees, kind of like San Diego, with a nice ocean. No, actually, that's not that helpful. I mean, it's nice. I like it, it's nice. But it's all these conditions we actually have that is where the treasure is. Like my anger, extraordinary treasure. Until conditions came up, I didn't think I was an angry person. I didn't think it was in there. Well, it turns out it was. It lives in there. It's vicious. And if I can't see it, I cannot make those aspirations that my anger would contain the anger of everybody else. I'd just be oblivious and be carrying that around, and that which I carry around in that way gets in the way of me seeing the light. So we begin with ourselves, and we work inside. This was even a tradition in early Christianity that got lost. If you ever, I'm a little geeky about religion, so forgive me, one more thing that's a little geeky. The very first thing that got written in the New Testament is a book called the Acts of the Apostles. People think it's the Gospels, it's not. Anyway, the first story in there, really, is about Saul of Tarsus riding his horse to Damascus and a lightning bolt smacking him on the head and knocking him off the horse, and he goes blind for a while and all that. And if you read in the Bible that you were probably raised with, it says, after a certain, I forget how many days, my eyes opened and the light was revealed to me. Turns out, that's a bad translation. We don't have the Aramaic anymore, but the Greek, which is the oldest thing we have, actually says, my eyes were opened and the light was revealed in me. But you got to find an interlineal Greek and English Bible, because whoever the powers that be decided it was important that we seek what we feel will save us or ennoble us or enlighten us outside. But that's not what the teaching has ever been. The jewel is under the wound inside. That's where it is. So, in that spirit, I created this thing. And what I'd like to do right now is just lead you through this guided meditation. And at the end, we can dedicate the merit of that and have time for questions and answers, because I'd love to hear your reflections on this idea that compassion wells up from within us. So Tonglen means sending and receiving in Tibetan. It's a kindness and compassion meditation that anyone can do. So we begin by finding a relaxed, comfortable position, either sitting upright, or if your back hurts or something, you can lie down comfortably on your back. The important thing is, though, your back is straight but relaxed. And we begin by embracing an altruistic motivation within ourselves. You might say something to yourself like this: I wish for an enduring sense of well-being. Since all living beings have the same wish, through this practice, I hope to accomplish benefit for myself and others. Because all beings have the potential for goodness, I offer this meditation with my deepest wish that everyone, without exception, experience the happiness, freedom, joy, and peace that flows from goodness. Now you take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, relax. And let awareness descend throughout your body, right down to the ground. Experience yourself as being held and supported and nurtured by the earth. Settle your body in a natural state of equilibrium and let your body be still. Relax deeply into the breath. With every exhalation, release everything that's in the mind. Release stories about the past. Release all hopes and fears about the future. Release all chatter and bewilderment about the present moment. Let all of these go with every out-breath. With every in-breath, notice alertness and the sense of being supported and nurtured. Notice any tension or tightness, and let your breath bring those places relaxation and refreshment. Allow the body to breathe without trying to control the breath in any way. Let the breath come and go, just as it is. Let your awareness merge with breath completely. Let your awareness flow like the breath. Relaxation naturally deepens, and a gentle smile comes. Rest in this simple awareness. When thoughts and stories of I and me and mine arise, let them be. Release them. Allow them to appear and disappear. Notice thoughts, then let them go without labels, judgment, or comment. Return to your breath. Let your mind settle. Smile inwardly as your mind gradually settles into its natural state of ease. Savor the simple experience of breathing, of being conscious, of being alive. Appreciate having a personal history and a future. Relish this precious life and a mind whose basic inner nature is awareness that can know and illuminate itself. And make the aspiration now. May I be free of suffering and its causes. Imagine your basic awakened nature as stainless light. No matter what has gone before, no matter what may happen in the future, it remains unstained, unimpeded, limitless and luminous. Envision this basic nature in the core of your being as a continuous source of goodness. From this inner nature, feel caring for yourself and watch over yourself with eyes of loving kindness. Don't push uncomfortable thoughts away. Imagine everything you may encounter in the future that could carry you away and lead you to misery. Envision your future self sitting before you and engender great care. Breathe calmly and naturally. Don't attempt to control the breath, but place a simple intention on it as it comes in. With each in-breath, say to yourself, may I be free of suffering and its causes. May I be free. With each in-breath, imagine drawing in all that you fear. Draw this darkness into the bright inner nature of your mind. Breath by breath, let all of this suffering be drawn in and be completely extinguished in the immeasurable light of your awakened heart. Breath by breath, imagine being freed of the inner causes of suffering. Imagine your inner strength growing. Imagine being free. Look upon yourself and your deepest wishes for the future with loving eyes. Smile to your life unfolding over the days and years and lifetimes to come. What do you strive for? What is the happiness you seek? Visualize every outbreath as comforting, nourishing, healing light flowing from your heart and creating the love and support needed to bring your wish to fulfillment. And just rest with that for a moment. With every outbreath, think, may I find that which I seek. May I truly be well and happy, with all my needs met. May the causes of genuine well-being be deeply rooted in me. Wish yourself well. Expand the field of your awareness now to embrace those who are around you, wherever you are right now. There are other sentient beings around you, human and non-human. Each of them wishes to be free of suffering. Embrace them in open awareness. With each in-breath, imagine drawing in the darkness of their suffering and its causes. As their darkness enters you, imagine that it meets pure light of your inner awakened nature and dissolves into nothing and disappears. Breath by breath, the light in your heart extinguishes their darkness. With every in-breath, imagine those around you finding and experiencing the relief and healing that they so deeply desire. Imagine the turbulence of their minds calming. Imagine they find peace and safety. With every outbreath, send light and goodness to all those around you. Imagine they receive it and are filled with hope and freedom and joy. Breath by breath, at your own pace, gradually expand the field of your awareness, encompassing more and more beings in an ever-increasing sphere of loving kindness and compassion. Continue to breathe out loving kindness and breathe in their suffering. Expand above and below and in every direction, through your town, your region, your country, especially where there's great pain and great fear. Expand to include the suffering of refugees, the suffering of illness, the suffering of poverty, the suffering of loneliness, of conflict, of war, of Earth herself, of beings in every realm of existence. Expand to non-human beings, including the ones who are particularly frightening and annoying. Wherever there's suffering and its causes, breathe these in. Free those who are suffering. Let the light of your loving kindness fill the world. Be the unknown friend to everyone. Once you've unfolded this whole world with light and drawn in and extinguished the darkness that obscures us all, let your awareness expand like a supernova, a burst of light extending out through space, through this galaxy and all other galaxies, wherever sentient beings may be. Breathe in and think, may all beings be free of suffering and its causes. Breathe out and think, may all be forever free. May all find the happiness they most deeply seek. May each one fully awaken. Meditate in this way for a while. Then let go of the meditation and relax. Let your mind rest just as it is. Let go of the sense that there are beings to meditate on, a person meditating, or an act of meditation. Let go of all of that and rest in silence. Rest in spacious awareness. Rest in connectedness. And when the meditation naturally comes to an end, dedicate the goodness of it. I like using the prayer that we're all familiar with called the four Brahma Viharas, or the four immeasurables, which goes simply, may all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never be separated from perfect joy. And may they remain in boundless equanimity, free from delusion, attachment, and aversion. So, in my mind, this is the great thing Dharma does for us. It doesn't tell us we have to believe in very much. There's not a lot of beliefs. But there are powerful methods for accomplishing what is truly our heart's desire. And all we need to do is find a way to practice them. I think of it as mental hygiene myself. It's a little like dental hygiene. Every day I take the time, without fail, to brush my teeth. Sometimes I even floss. Ooh. But this happens all the time. And it keeps my mouth from smelling bad, keeps my teeth from rotting, and a whole bunch of other things. Well, by meditating in this way, every day without fail, it'll keep your mind from having smelly thoughts, and it'll keep your, what shall I say, your good nature from rotting into something that you and others would find noxious. And so it's in our hands. Now, I did bring a bunch of copies of this with me in case anybody wanted to have them. And so, I don't know, you pass those out for anybody who wants them. Yeah. And we've got, 5-10 minutes left. If there are any questions or comments, I'd love to hear those. I won't necessarily have any answers to any questions, but I'd love to hear the questions.
Just have a couple stories.
I love that.
When I first came to Buddhism, probably 17 years ago, something like that, I was reading a book. I think it was Lama Surya Das.
Yeah.
And I had become interested in Buddhism. I'd been on a long journey, and I had studied a lot of different spirituality. I think, we can kind of fetishize the exotic and the spiritual, the really big thing. And so I had read really widely, and I was reading through Lama Surya Das, and I saw him talking about Tonglen. And I read the sentence that said, you take on the suffering of others, you breathe in that darkness and that blackness, and then you breathe out the light. Mm-hmm. And I read it quickly because my mind said, oh, I've seen this before. Because I was kind of thinking of all those breathe in the light and then breathe out all of your negativities, You breathe in the positive and breathe out the negative. And I read through that sentence quickly, and then I stopped, and I realized it said exactly the opposite of what I thought it had said.
Yep.
And that's really the moment it hit me. This is different. This is really, this is really working with something here.
Yeah.
This is profound. This is hard. Mm. Which brings me to my second story. And that is that when a lot of times when people learn about Tonglen, the question is, am I actually taking on someone's suffering? Am I actually going to suffer because of that? And I know that's a lot of the reason we visualize ourselves as light, and we can see that negativity dissipating because of the core of who we are. But I remember the story, I don't know which teacher it was, but somebody asked that question, are we actually taking on suffering from someone? And that teacher said, I hope so.
Wow.
And that's when you know someone's really practiced, right? So, that's all.
Yeah. I mean, just think of what courage you're training yourself in by meditating like that. Just trying to get what you want and avoid what you don't want. I mean, you kind of become a weenie, honestly, a spiritual weenie. What courage to really confront the present moment as it is and meet it with enlightened qualities. Amazing. It's just amazing. And then the fact that we received these kind of gifts, practices we can actually do is amazing to me. It's, I remember years ago, before this building stood here, another one stood here, and we'd have these extraordinary lamas come and give teachings like all the time. They'd travel in, these Tibetan guys would come in with translators, and it seemed like real ordinary to me. It was like, yeah, that's what happens here. Isn't that great? And I kind of took it for granted. Since that time, the two that visited the most often have passed away. And others that visited have also passed away. And that building has passed away. This is a moment in time where we can get some of the most profound spiritual gifts that have ever been given. And we should take advantage of that, because we too will pass away. And our abilities to actually practice could go too. I'm like 72 years old. I took care of my father as he declined, and he had probably one of the sharpest minds I've ever encountered on this planet in my lifetime. But it wasn't like that at the end. He suffered from some dementia. He was not a practitioner, but had he known about this and not practiced it when he could, what a pity that would be. I'm not trying to manipulate anybody into anything here. I'm just kind of pointing out a reality that we have extraordinary opportunities here. Even our bad circumstances are extraordinary opportunities, because they bring up the stuff in us that we really need to work on. And that's why the whole first part of this guided meditation that I shared was really shamatha, right? That first page was just calming the mind. And then the second part was starting with ourselves. And especially, I like this thing where you visualize your future self in front of you, and you start asking it, well, what do you need? What are you afraid of? And all that. And you begin to make the commitment to take away all that fear and make the commitment to create the conditions for this goodness to really manifest. It's a powerful thing. And once we've done it for ourselves and we get used to doing it that way, it's the opposite way of, what we all thought in the beginning, we get strong and become courageous. That's quite a gift.
I was introduced to Buddhism when I was 25 years old. I practiced Nichiren Buddhism for a long time. And I still have an altar in my home and all that. And you had said something at one of the talks that we were at that no one in that practice ever said, and it really encouraged me, where you said, find your practice, what works for you.
Yeah.
And I went home that night and I chanted in front of my altar with such deep appreciation, because I realized that it's all encompassing. And I could make that practice better while doing this practice. And I've never been a meditator because I just, they say, go find your happy place or whatever. And I'd be like, I don't even know what that is. So a few weeks ago when I was here, I think it was the day that Lama Kathy was here. And so the hour before meditating, and you'd said it today, and I had this, it was a huge epiphany for me, huge, where I'm sitting there and I got my eyes closed and, all these thoughts are going by and stuff. And I went, oh my God, these thoughts are like a toddler. running around in my head. And I finally realized I am not those thoughts. That's
Right.
not who I am. That was the biggest epiphany I think I've ever had in my spiritual path. And I'm like 67 years old. I'm like, wow, it took a long time to get there. But whatever, I got there.
Yeah,
You know?
that's right.
So, and then she was talking about impermanence and such that day. And then she was also talking about giving space to those thoughts. And I had an actual experience of that because my tendency, if something's bothering me, that person's going to know it. So we were meditating, and there was a child over here doing child stuff, a real child, not in my head. And my first response was going to be like, shut up, be quiet, you're bothering me. But as I just let the thoughts go, and I went, you know what, I can choose if I want to be bothered by that child's
Right.
sound. And I did, and it went away. And this is huge for me to find those spaces in between the thoughts because I'm a very reactive person and I just say things off the top without thinking. And so now here, learning to not suppress it, but like not do that as often and come from a more thoughtful place.
Thank you. A more spacious place. One of my favorite things that I ever heard a teacher say was said by Pema Chodron. She said, "You are the sky. Everything else is just weather." I love that.
Could you take a moment and list the 6 perfections again?
6 perfections, yes. So the first is generosity. That's why in the refuge prayer we say generosity and the rest. So for years and years on my own practice, I didn't do it that way. I actually said them out loud to myself. So, because I thought, like you, I think they're important to learn these. So the first is generosity. The second is ethics. And Buddhist ethics are particularly interesting to study and learn, at least the principles behind them. I mean, you could become a Buddha lawyer, but I'm not saying that. But ethics. The third is patience. And if you think of it, it's like in generosity, you want to give the right thing in the right way at the right time to the right person, right? So naturally, in order to accomplish that, you need ethics. And then, of course, things won't happen the way you wanted them to, even when you've been generous and ethical, and you need patience. You need to do your best and then relax. So patience is after that. Eventually, though, if you're practicing sincerely, it will have an impact on you and others. And there's this thing about good fortune arising for others in particular. And when you can rejoice in that, that's called empathetic joy. That's the joy the Buddha was referring to in particular. And so joy is the fourth. The fifth is mindful awareness or concentration, and the sixth is wisdom. And they all flow one from another. So out of this joy for others, obviously, you're acknowledging that you can see connections. You're happy for them because they're connected to you. It's almost like if my hand gets something good, my brain is happy about that. If something good happens to you, it's like part of myself. So automatically, you're starting to get to the point of wisdom there. In order to stabilize that, though, you need mindful awareness. That's what the practice of shamatha, one of the qualities that develops naturally. And then once that's stabilized and you really do see interdependence directly, that's wisdom. Then you know what to do and how to do it and all those things. So those are the 6 that are usually talked about. There are other lists. There's a list of 10, but I don't remember exactly. What they do is they broke some of those down into subgroups, but those are the most common ones. Yeah. Well, as usual, I've gone over. That's what I do. So thank you for your patience and hanging in there with me. I appreciate it. Let's take a moment and say the dedication of merit prayer in English together. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Thanks, everybody.